Hello and welcome to 2026, everyone. This is the first episode of Material Matters with Grant Gibson of the Year, and I'm delighted to be back. For listeners who might be new to all this, the idea is that I speak to a designer, maker, artist or architect about a material or technique with which they're intrinsically linked and discover how it changed their lives and careers. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Shubhi Sachan. Shubhi is a multi-disciplinary designer and founder of Material Library of India, a research and design consultancy committed to unlocking the potential of industrial and agricultural waste, of which India, a country with a population of over 1.4 billion people, has plenty. Over the years, MLI has worked with brands and organisations such as IKEA and the British Council, as well as presenting work and ideas across the globe, including at last year's Material Matters London, where it reimagined cotton as a climate-adaptive, culturally rich material. Shubhi, thank you very much for doing this. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you so much for having me on the show, and thank you so much, and wish you a very good start of the year 2026.
Well, thank you very much. That's very kind. Was that introduction okay?
Yes.
Good, because it's always odd reading about somebody's life in front of them. You know, it never feels particularly comfortable, but good. I'm glad. I am looking at you over a screen because you're in India. Can I ask where you are at the moment?
I am very much at New Delhi, India.
Very good. And we have a tradition on this podcast of asking guests to describe their workshop or studio. So maybe for the listeners, can you tell us a little bit about where you work? Are you messy, for instance? I can see samples and things behind you. Let's draw a picture of your studio.
It's interesting. As soon as you enter the studio, it's one floor of a building. It's a huge open space in the center of the studio where we do all the madness. But as soon as you enter the studio, you get to see an anatomy of a garment and in a huge scale. And that's where you enter. And that's the installation we have installed right at the beginning, that how do you imagine products? And then when you enter, you start to see like loads and loads of materials. And then you come to an open, huge hall kind of a space where we structure our installations, we do our experiments. Then at the back of the studio, we have two rooms. One is a little tool room, maker space room, and one is a little lab kind of a room. And then we have a little pantry area. So that's pretty much our offices. Then there is a small conference room kind of an area as well. That's all it contains.
How many people are you?
We're a team of 12 to 13 people.
Okay. And they are all designers, or what are their skills?
So the team of 6-7 researchers and designers, and I would say system thinkers are there in the team. And then there are two. One is a manager. He's kind of a all-rounder.
Right.
And he does everything. One is a maker, and he just make things, whatever we have to prototype and do things which are not very conventional to get done from a particular professional. Like you can't do woodworking only. You have to mix like 3 different materials. Yeah, those kind of things one person does. And then we have like people who assist us with material making. So they make materials. So let's say we are building an archive for pigments. So they're processing all the pigments and they're extracting it from the flowers, and they're doing the experiments. And then someone is working with all the textile waste. We have a nearby office which is called Textile Recovery Facility. And that another office is a space where all the textile waste gets housed and segregated and sorted.
Okay. So did you include those people in that unit in your numbers of staff?
Those are only 2 people who are working constantly on that project.
All right. So Material Library of India, you founded in 2017? I think initially in Mumbai before moving to where you are now, New Delhi. Mm-hmm. It's the first Material Library of India. Now, you've described your space, but can you describe what it is that you do and what the purpose of the library is?
It's very interesting how, and naively how it started. So I went to St. Martin's to do my master's, and seeing all the material libraries and coming back to India, it was my first instinct that why there is not even a single material library in India. And why people don't understand how to use those material libraries. Can I open one? And what will I do with that if I open one? And how will people perceive it? These are the questions which I'm talking about in retrospect. But at that time, I was like, can I open one? That was the only question. And when we started, it was like, okay, here's a material library. People really don't know what to do with it. People really don't know how to think about it, because we as a country are surrounded by most of the manufacturing-centric making, not design-centric and not heavy. It's most of the time job work, like designs come from the west side of the world, and the east side of the world executes them and manufactures them and give the bulk orders a shape and a size and volume. So really, very little room to think and initiate. So that's how Material Library of India started.
But did it start literally with samples? When you first opened, what did you have?
So my work from 2012 to 2016 had a good amount of samples. And I thought like that should be okay. And then I started collecting those were solution samples. But the problem samples needs to be collected from the ground, and we actually started collecting them.
So the solution samples being the end product, and you're talking about the problem samples, which is the waste, right? Okay.
Which is the waste, and which is agri-waste and raw materials. And we started collecting them. Soon to realize that people really don't know what to do with it. People really don't know if they come as a member to this library, what to expect and how to deal with it. What kind of information will be there and how to process that. So we just took a U-turn. We went back to our consultation business. Until today, we're just sticking to our consultation business, through which we open our library to different and a very targeted and specific audience. So we're still sitting on our archive, but it's the idea of opening it to public was a very naive one to begin with.
Okay, that's interesting. What kind of waste in your archive? What kind of waste do you collect?
We have started working with industrial waste. So in the beginning, the path was shaped. I mean, you must be aware, like talking about this back in 2013, 14, and saying that you want to do something with this waste, and circularity should be the subject, and it should be included in conglomerates and corporates report in practical ways, was a big ask. So when I started doing that, a lot of people were like, what do you want? I mean, what is it? What is it that you're going to get out from this entire exercise? So in the beginning, it was a very interesting project. One of the first initial projects which I did after coming back to India was working with a conglomerate called Godrej & Boyce. And the project was titled as Punha Project. So it was 634 materials which we mapped across 39 factories, pan-India. And that project was across sectors of aerospace, locks making, precision engineering, automobiles, interiors, all of it. So it was spanning across 14 different segments of business of Godrej & Boyce. And I really compliment them for taking that particular step and saying that this project is needed at that time. And the project went on for 3 years, and we mapped those 634 materials to draw a matrix. And those are the kind of projects which we started archiving as industrial waste. So when you look at a ceiling fan or a fan, you don't really imagine how many materials have gone waste to give you a 3 material output. And that was the statement. Like if you look at a finished truck, you might imagine that 400 materials have gone in. But if you look at a ceiling fan, a simple object, or a pen, for example, you don't really imagine that 20 materials have gone down to the waste stream to give you that one little output. And that was the aim, and that's how we started collecting hardcore industrial materials. Those were part of our archives from Indian conglomerates.
So the Godrej & Boyce project, was that the one where you recycled 180,000 pairs of protective rubber and cotton gloves and created a material from it? That was your output from that project?
Yes, that was the Punha project for Godrej & Boyce. Yeah, that was based in Bombay.
And can we talk about India and waste in general? Because, I mean, waste has generated quite a lot of press in the media in the UK recently, with criminal gangs moving in and creating illegal rubbish tips. But Europe sends a lot of its waste to India, particularly paper, aluminium, used tyres. In 2022 alone, the EU exported 3.5 million tonnes of waste to your nation. The UK exports millions of tires. And as we pointed out in the intro, India has 1.4 billion people. So the nation's waste issue is incredibly acute, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely, Grant. So it's a very interesting global dynamics which we have built, and the relationship with materials and consumption and the disposal of waste which we have built. I mean, Indians being fascinated with the Western world and saying that we want to be like them, not knowing what the consequences are. If every American consumes X amount of materials in their life, imagine 1.4 billion consuming the same amount of materials. We will be frying as a planet, right? So we can't afford to do those kind of just lifestyle switches without thinking and without doing much. But then I think it's high time we take cognizance of those things. And I'm very happy that you mentioned that importing these kind of waste just puts an end to when it's not mine, it's not my problem, and it's someone else's problem now, and somebody else has to deal with it. It's a very tricky space because up until 30 years ago, India was not generating as much waste of their own. So it was kind of okay to feed into other people's waste and creating a second layer of usage for those materials in the local economy. However, when we are talking about now, moving forward 30 years, I think the purchasing power and the consumption patterns have dramatically shifted, which has led to India create a humongous amount of its own domestic waste. Like for textiles, for example. Textile waste is a huge amount of waste. And 40 years ago, 30 years ago, it was only the Western world which was sending its waste, and a second layer of consumption was fulfilled from those containers which land at Delhi airport or Panipat port in India on a daily basis. However, now India generates several hundred tons of its own waste as textile, and we don't know what to do with it. So, I mean, it's dramatically different now, and it's an added layer. And if anything, and it's not only India, to be honest, it's India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, right from shipwrecking to plastic. I think waste colonialism still exists. And that's what it looks like. And that's what we need to address from these kind of think tanks is what we are working towards.
So how, it's a huge question, but how do you go about addressing it? I mean, there has to be systemic change, presumably.
So it's very interesting when we are working with textile waste. If I just pick like one segment of waste, which is textile waste. Plastic waste has led the way for a lot of people, and a lot in the entire world. Plastic waste has led the way of how do we see waste and how do we need to handle it. And a lot of precedent is coming from how the world made policies and EPRs, extended producer responsibility policies, and everything made around plastic waste. Now coming to textile, I think it's very interesting that how global production, that's the dynamics part, that how global production is happening in a major chunk in India, and a global waste coming and sitting in India at the same time, makes the whole dynamics of handling waste very, very different. So right now, we are at a junction where mapping what comes from outside of India to be called as domestic Indian textile waste or not, and what gets produced and consumed and sold and post-consumption becomes a post-consumer textile waste from Indian audience itself, are the two segments which are very difficult to separate from each other for Indian policy regulation and trade and HSN code regulation and any kind of nitty-gritties. So we are at that point where this, Ministry of Textiles is working in a big way towards handling these issues and regularizing the recycling of fibers into the market back again. And that's how they're trying to adapt towards circularity. However, this particular clear line of distinction makes it very, very difficult to say like, oh, this is Indian domestic textile waste, or this is coming to India as textile waste, and now it's all mixed up in the market. So yeah, the policy framework has to be designed in a way. And it's very interesting that how a lot of global foundations are also stepping in to solve this crisis, because they also see a major chunk of problem lying here. So yeah, I mean, it's becoming very, very interesting for people to see this problem in a first-hand scenario and then draw those policy arrangements and policy guidelines and say like, okay, this is how we think this should be stopped, this should not be stopped, right from Prato to Panipat in Prato in Italy to Panipat in India. I think tracking the entire waste chain, what is coming and sitting here, is very, very interesting and needs to be tackled globally rather than regionally and saying this is Indian waste. And the policies needs to be framed accordingly.
Sure. I mean, the other interesting thing, I read a piece in The Guardian last year that described about the huge amounts of biodegradable waste food, fundamentally, that's being thrown onto landfill. And that creates huge amounts of methane. This is something you're obviously aware of. Agricultural waste is very much part of what you talk about in your library.
Agriculture waste is actually not waste. It's just, I mean, to be honest, in our study and understanding so far, agriculture waste is not waste. Agriculture waste was always a resource, provided we were living in a very close to craft culture. I mean, whenever you had crafts as a country, or we had crafts, or Africa had crafts as an entire patch of land, the materiality of those crafts was always informed by the agri waste. If you're harvesting something and you have taken out food from it, whatever is the remaining aspect of it becomes the feed for you to do something else, right? And that's how craft was intertwined in our everyday lives. Now, if we have removed, like, you don't buy handmade utensils all the time. You don't buy handcrafted food all the time. So those things are far removed from our everyday materiality. Hence, things which we don't see the use of become waste, and they are not of any much use to us. So that's our relationship with agricultural waste versus the waste which you are talking about here, I guess, if I'm not mistaken, is the waste which is going from our everyday waste cycles from urbanized lives is going out and sitting in landfills because we are not composting, or we are not able to compost all of it, which constitutes 70 to 80% of municipal solid waste in most of the world. And that waste segregation at source itself will reduce substantial amount of waste production at source.
Yes. I mean, you've talked in the past about the importance of the rebirth of materials, which is a turn of phrase I rather like.
So let's say if we have these materials coming out from industrial waste, I think rebirth is one of the most important solutions we can give to those materials, because those materials are supposed to be serving one life after the other. And if they don't, they will end up, we don't really know. When we are manufacturing them, we aren't really thinking that, oh, what will happen to it after 5 years, or what will happen to it after 30 years, depending on what kind of span we are designing it for or engineering it for. So if you're not thinking about those things while making or manufacturing or assembling them together, I think keeping them in cycle is our only best possible bet. And when it comes to agriculture waste, I don't think that's the solution. So rebirth gets replaced with regeneration. I mean, materials knows how to take care of itself, provided we don't trap it into a man-made material. Like, let's say, if we just take any grass and we put varnish on it, it just don't know what to do with. Don't know how to disintegrate now.
Because it can't decompose.
Yeah. Otherwise, the grass itself is very much capable of taking care of itself.
Yeah.
So yeah, when it comes to industrial waste, rebirth, I think, is the key cycle which we look at as a philosophy and as a work principle, as a methodology. But when it comes to agriculture waste, regeneration and letting that material have that breathability into it till the end of serving as a product and then going back and taking care of itself is the key. So those are the two aspects which we work with.
And just to be clear about what your role as the library is, I mean, you see yourself as a research, and you use the word mapping quite often. You don't have a factory processing tons and tons of waste material.
No, we don't aim to do that either. So our role as a library is getting more and more simplified. As I said, Grant, in the beginning, when we started with very industrially heavy materials. But the house was on fire and house is catching more and more fire. I mean, if we imagine the world to be a house and we are still burning all the resources, and that's what the thought was starting when we started Material Library of India. So just to say that when we started with super industrially heavy materials, down the line, we could only see a certain segment of people being able to understand those materials and the solutions. But as we kept on moving forward in our journey, our work has gotten more and more simpler. So right now, in past few years, our focus has been, especially post 2020, our focus has been everyday materiality. And when we say everyday materiality, we are building an archive where you were talking about Cotton 2.0. We're building an archive where people come and talk. People can come and see all those varieties of 30 varieties of cotton or 40 varieties of cotton, native cotton to India in that archive. And we're building something like that. So we work on 5 elements: cosmetics, textile, food, water, and plastics. And these 5 elements, anybody as a civil society cannot live without in today's world. And that's what we work towards as everyday materiality. That's what library holds right now.
Okay, so moving on from waste for a moment, because you brought it up, you were part of the Futures Lab at last year's Material Matters London, and I was intrigued by the project you displayed, which is Cotton 2.0, which, and I'm going to quote here, reimagines cotton as a climate-adaptive, culturally rich material, merging ancient traditions with contemporary sustainability. Cotton is a material with a difficult reputation. It uses a lot of water as well as pesticides and fertilizers to grow, which leads to degradation of the soil. But you looked at using the crop to create garments that adapt to climate change, as well as preserving cultural identity and allowing personal expression. So how did you do that?
So I think as a word, when we look at things, we look at highly industrialized things. And that's very interesting to my head. I mean, why is it so that your toothpaste and my toothpaste is supposed to be same? We live like 3 continents or 4 continents away from each other, but your toothpaste comes out of the similar kind of tube as mine. Probably some ingredients here and there. Same is the case with cotton. When we think about cotton and we just singularize it by saying like cotton, is there only one cotton across the globe? No. The answer to that is absolutely no. So when we're talking about cotton, so first step people start with, is cotton good for me or polyester good for me? Of course, cotton is good for you. Then you start to dissect cotton. And here you're talking about body type, right? If polyester is better for my body or cotton is better for my body, of course, cotton is better for your body. It brings breathability and polyester doesn't. Polyester blocks it. Maybe a good outer layer, but not a first layer to your skin, and so on. And textile is your second skin. So that's the first step. But the second step is, cotton is very bad for the environment. Which cotton is bad for the environment? That's the question which we are missing. Nobody asks which cotton is bad for the environment. Yes, the genetically modified, heavily taxing to the soil and water irrigation channels is a bad cotton. Does it need to grow everywhere? The answer is no. So what we were talking about at Cotton 2.0 during Material Matters in 2025 was regional rain-fed cotton, which does not ask for you to bring X amount of water, irrespective of whether you have it or not in that region, X amount of fertilizers, irrespective of whether the soil needs it or soil degradation is constantly happening. Those are the kind of things, which we were talking about in that. So India was blessed with more than 900 varieties of cotton or more. And right now we are left with 42? Not all of them are documented well. So in trade, if you're going to buy and if you're going to try to get your hands onto regional cotton, maybe 4 to 5 varieties will come in your hand. But there are still 42 remaining out there, or probably more, where if we start the seed keeping and all those things again, we'll probably have few more varieties. But if those are the kind of native varieties to southern India, to northern India, to eastern India, and to central India, and so on, why do we rely on this one particular kind of cotton and we make the whole world go such heavy on one particular material? It's like burdening the whole world with just one material and saying, like, why are you not producing enough?
So the notion being these indigenous cottons don't use so much water, don't use so much pesticide, etc., better for the soil.
Yes, absolutely.
And then you combine that with craft, which seems like a central plank of much of your thinking.
Yeah, exactly. So now I'll just give you one example of craft from one of the states, which is very well known across. It's from Rajasthan. It's from Jaipur area, near the Thar Desert. If you have cotton clothing, they have this craft of stitching mirrors on top of them. And you have that pretty, very shiny and very colorful threads stitching mirrors on top of your surface of the garment as a surface embellishment. Now, if you have that kind of surface embellishment, nowadays, a large chunk of audience only thinks that that's what people were fancying and that's what they like doing, and hence it became a regional craft. But it's coming from Thar Desert. It's not coming from Kerala or South or from Kashmir region, which is colder. Why?
I don't know. You're going to tell me.
Because it was designed by those people surviving in that region to reflect back sunlights.
Ah. Okay.
So they can, there's enough sand there, and then they have to reflect back sunlight, and they can still survive in the minus 50 degree temperature. And that's their smart way of crafting something. Now, it's up to us how we limit the use of craft, but they were crafting something which was helping them survive extreme weather for them without really having to build huge technology-based things as per them. So that's the side of craft which we explore. And that's the side of intervention which we try to bring in when we are trying to explore materiality.
So you showed Cotton 2.0 in September. Has the project progressed? Does it have an end goal, or was the research your end goal?
Research was the end goal at that point, and we reached a good finding our outputs kind of junction at that point when we were presenting at Material Matters. Right now, we are in the process of compiling it all together, and you might have a book, Cotton 2.0, to be accessing as a mainstream book for people to flip through and read and understand. At the same time, we're also looking at developing this kind of a physical archive space, which is more accessible. So people are just not talking and forgetting about it. People are actually interacting with those real life materials and understanding the background and journey and their regional connect.
Hope you're enjoying the show. I just wanted to let you know that our next major event will be in June. After the huge success of last year, we will be returning to the beautiful Gamle Dock in Christianshavn for Material Matters Copenhagen. The fair runs from the 10th to the 12th of June and is part of 3 days of design. Spaces are filling up, so if you and your company is interested in taking part, drop us a line at hello@materialmatters.design. That's hello@materialmatters.design. Also, a reminder that our virtual bookshop is open all year round, with titles written by podcast guests such as Glenn Adamson, Zandra Rhodes, Tim Minchell and Edmund Duval, to name just a few, and a slew of other fascinating authors. It's a genuine treasure trove of knowledge. You can find it at our website, materialmatters.design. Take some time to dive in. In all the research I've done around you, the phrase that pops up more often than not is material literate. You talk about making people material literate. What does that mean practically? Education is an important part of your practice, right?
Yes, it is indeed. The overarching goal of Material Library of India will be material literacy. It just came funnily in my head when we're this capitalist world we live in, and everybody wants to be financially literate. And everybody talks about financial literacy. But finances or anything you built on, even for that matter, the currency of every respective country, it doesn't come without materiality. There are materials involved. And if you don't know anything about these materials, what are you going to build and what are you going to sell and what are you going to buy to keep these capitalist words sustained? How much do you know about materials and how much do we waste? I mean, the most precious things are regarded as waste in today's world because we don't know. I'll tell you, in India, we pay extra amount to buy old rice. I mean, Indian basmati rice, you must have heard of. So we pay extra amount to buy old seasoned rice. But in the West, I have seen a lot of my American friends just discarding rice because it has an expiry date. And we in India pay an extra price. That's the regional connect. That's a regional connect for a lot of people. If you're not coming from a region which is harvesting and growing and understanding the nutrition value of it, we'll have a disconnect. We'll have a different kind of relationship with it. So what we value and pay extra price for, you just discard it in the West because you don't have the similar kind of connection to it. And that's what material literacy is about. I mean, that's a classic example I keep giving. Material literacy is about knowing why are you eating what you're eating? Why are you wearing what you're wearing? And does it help you build yourself better or stronger? Or does it just means fitting in and still not able to figure out where to land? It's just basic fundamental question.
Sure. And you run courses for people on this?
Yes. I mean, we do have 3 to 4 types of academic courses, which we have been doing. And then we have workshops for individuals who can come into Material Library as and when we are organizing them, or whenever we are in a different city and people are organizing, we travel and do those workshops as well.
And the academic courses are for students, for school kids. Who are they aimed at?
Yeah, those are for school kids and for colleges, like institutions. Professional courses. I mean, it can be part of your architecture program. It can be part of your design program, design curriculum, textile design, and so on.
And you also, I'm intrigued, own a thrift store. How did that come about?
That's part of our textile recovery facility.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a thrift store, but it's actually not a store. Thrift store is about pushing this notion, which a lot of Indian population was very comfortable with, that secondhand clothing or hand-me-downs were pretty okay with everyone. Suddenly, we happen in, as I was telling you and referencing back to the statement, that 30 years purchasing power has shifted dramatically in India. And in this period, everybody has a very different notion of hand-me-downs now. People don't associate with it anymore the way they used to. And thrift store is all about saying, like, you come here, you pick a piece of clothing of your choice and just give us the waste which you don't want as textile waste. It's not about currency being involved. It's about textile being its own currency in that thrift store. And just you come, you dump what you don't like and you don't need anymore, and you take what you need.
Okay, so it's fundamentally a swap.
Yes. It's just a swap. But at the same time, you might give me a non-functional clothing or a completely torn off and a discard to be recyclable, fit for recycling only clothing, versus you take a fully functional garment back, which is perfect for us. And
people can walk off the street and do this?
Yes, absolutely.
How does that work? It's actually a store in that sense that, it's got a shop front and people can...
No. It's not a shop front. A lot of people, we keep telling this to people that we are doing this and you can come, and we organize these thrift kind of little exchanges where we put that information out that these are open days, you can come in. Or if we have now built a little community called Material Library of India Tribe, and we keep putting these messages out to our little community, and then people come in and or tell their neighbors and friends.
Very good. It seems to me you talk about system change, but you're not completely rejecting capitalism. I mean, you often work with corporations like IKEA, you mentioned. You did the Living Library for Seeds project with them, which is at Dutch Design Week in 2020. What did you do with them? What was the seed library about?
I'll tell you, but why will I reject capitalism? I will not be able to reject. Who will pay my bills?
Well.
So rejecting capitalism was never the idea, but questioning the idea of wealth and questioning the idea of richness and questioning the idea of health. And for a common man, at the same time, making circularity back into the conversation in a holistic manner is the system challenge and system thinking, which we are talking about.
You have pointed out, you've said there's a huge mismatch between the sustainability that's demanded by the capitalist world versus the sustainability that nature's cycles allow. So you do question the tenets of capitalism.
Yes, but I will not try to push myself out of that whole cycle because I'm forced to be in that cycle. And you can be part of the system and still question it and change it. So, I mean, people say often in fashion, slow fashion and fast fashion. And I don't fully agree with that kind of jargon, because I say slow means, I'm going in a slothy manner. No, I'm not going in slothy manner. Slow really means in sync with nature. You just say hurry up in an assembly line, but if you grow rice on a paddy field, you don't say hurry up, I need this tomorrow. It doesn't work like that. So slow doesn't mean being sloth. Slow means in sync with nature, versus fast means breaking that rhythm and just trying to bypass those boundaries which nature has created.
But is it possible to marry those seemingly conflicting demands?
See, demand or greed is the question I pose back on you. Demand is being created to consume more and more and more and more and more, versus demand can be fulfilled if you tell people that you only need this much. I do not need 5,000 garments in my wardrobe, but I've been forced to think that I need one for every occasion. So that's the kind of demand we are questioning, not the genuine demand of clothing myself as a basic human need I'm questioning.
Sure.
So very good linkage here is a living library of seats, which we did.
Yes, let's talk about that with IKEA.
Yes. So Living Library of Seats with IKEA was a project which we did at the peak of COVID. And with a very, very nice idea, IKEA came up with that they would like to tell people that how to have, even in the closed boundaries of their home, how to see resourcefulness and how to look beyond just the materials which are coming to them. And then they're going and they need to buy more to sustain. So Seed Library was asking them that, if you are squeezing a lemon and the seeds are coming out, they're not just waste, they're your resources. But nobody has looked. Before COVID, we were not just stopping and pausing by, and we were ready to have a glance at those kind of materials differently. It was only COVID, I remember, as far as I can think back, that it was only that time when we actually paused and we reflected on these kind of things, because the whole world was standstill. So IKEA came up with this idea that how do we do this kind of seed preservation, learning this thing. So building a physical archive of library, seed library, and a digital one as well for their stores to play and their customer base to have a look at. That what are your regional materials? So right from cotton to food to other materials, we just demonstrated like some 10 materials in the digital archive. And we said like, this is how you identify what is your regional material. And this is how that's how you do the seed keeping, basically. And that was a very simple and I think it's a very beautifully thought through project of telling people how to look at resources, which we just keep discarding. I mean, the power of seed.
Yes, no, interesting. And the other interesting project I was intrigued by was Cancel Plans, where you collaborated with Malika Reddy to take waste from a major pharmaceutical company, which never gets named in any of the pieces I read, but I don't know why that would be. But you took blister packs and rejected condoms and turned them into, what did you turn them into?
Garments, jackets, shoes, streetwear clothing, and an entire line. Yes. So it's with Dr. Reddy's. Dr. Reddy's is an Indian pharmaceutical hub.
Right.
And like Godrej and Boyce, they were not a conglomerate. They are just focused on drugs and pharmaceutical industry. So them having just one singular line of business and then having this thought that we are doing everything in our capacity to bring down this environmental impacts, but there are some regulations. If we have to package the drug in a certain way, these packagings get wasted or these materials get tested and rejected. What do we do with all these things? So it was a brainchild of Malika Reddy, which is Dr. Reddy's daughter. she was the one who came up with this thought and briefed to me that, hey, we have these materials and how do we do this? So we just ended up, again, combining it with the regional craft. And I think the project was brilliant because we could take the waste which is being generated at Dr. Reddy's factory in Hyderabad, in Telangana region of India, and just say like, oh, what is the craft here? Ikat is the craft here. Oh, Ikat weavers are looking at work. Can we just change their materiality and ask them what best can they produce from these materials? And that makes the whole thing sustainable and socially also a very strong point for this project to be established here in this particular region as well. So that's what we did. And we just kind of created the entire production from those blister packagings to condom waste, using the Ikat weavers techniques and tools, and giving them a full liberty to design the garments and design the yardages. And then we took those into different kind of product cycles.
Do you have to be careful what companies you work with? Do you ever feel that companies approach you and they're kind of using you to greenwash their reputation?
I don't think we have to be careful. I think as long as the work is happening, I don't think we worry much about like, this is what the organization is going to do. So as far as greenwashing is concerned, those are not these kind of projects. I might not sound very intelligent here, but those are different kind of projects. When people are trying to say that, oh, we want to do this, but we don't want to do anything about it. I mean, you don't have much to do. Projects in which it's a top-down approach. In Godrej and Boyce, there's the management who just decides that, yes, we need to address all the waste materials across 39 factories. Otherwise, how do you enter those factories? It's the management who's taking that decision and saying, like, we need to do something about these things. So is with Malika Reddy. I mean, she's looking at those materials from several years, and that's why she has come up with that observation that we need to do something differently. So otherwise, these projects don't get past a certain thought process. And those greenwashing projects are very different, where they're just paperwork. You don't really do anything.
Can we talk about your background, Shubhi? Because you were born in Lucknow. Your father worked for the government. Your mother was a teacher. What were you like as a child?
What was I like as a child? Very bad academically, very basic, always being questioned for having a lot of questions.
Question for having questions.
Yes. Why do you have so many questions?
Yeah.
Why you keep asking questions? Why don't you go study?
So you're meant to be quiet. Is that what you're saying?
I was meant to be quiet. I was meant to be not asking questions, but everybody people were not asking usually, or kids were not asking usually, and adults were not having answers to. So like, I was not supposed to be doing all that. I was academically a very, very average kid. But I think it's interesting that I was not able to understand, why am I supposed to study Shakespeare and where am I going to use it? And those were my questions. Like, where do I use this if I have to study Shakespeare today? And why should I write in that kind of an English? My regular English is challenged back then, and then I'm studying Shakespeare English, and where am I going to use it? So those questions were not always entertained, of course.
I read somewhere you were compared unfavorably with your elder brother who wanted to be an engineer. Is that true?
Oh my God, you have done some research, Grant.
A little bit, occasionally.
Yes, I mean, every other child in India is an engineer or a doctor, right? And that's what parents want. And STEM jobs are the only kind of job categories which have been seen, which makes you credible in the society. So me doing what I'm doing, it just took me a long time to tell people that this is going to pay my bills and this is going to be an all right kind of a career, and this is not going to put me on the streets.
Well, you studied textile design at Apogee Institute of Design in Delhi. When did the idea of being a textile designer take hold? What age were you?
Being a textile designer was an escape from being a fashion designer. Fashion was very limiting in my head. Somebody said you can be a fashion designer. Back then, very few. Manish Arora, Rohit Bal, those were the only fashion designers in India. And you're like, I don't come from that kind of a money background. I mean, 4 years down the line, my course ends, and then what will I do? So, and fashion is not the core of the end product they're selling. I mean, it starts with textile. So where is the more diversity? And that's how the idea of doing textile came in. That textile is way more diverse, and you can do a lot more than just ending up in fashion. So textile was a more of, and this was back in 2002. So 2002, you're just like, it's pre-internet. Internet was not fully available. And not like today.
No. I mean, no broadband in those days. Absolutely.
Yeah. So 2002, you're just like limiting yourself to this internet-based knowledge. You're not having access to these internet-based knowledge. At the same time, you're just like, oh, what is design? Design is fashion. Design didn't have many languages, meanings, disciplines, understandings across the country, in India at least. So yeah, I mean, if you want to study anything apart from being a doctor or an engineer, what do you do? Or an architect, what do you do? So you study fashion design. And I didn't want to study fashion design. And that was my escape to become a textile designer.
Okay, interesting. Subsequently, you worked as a surface designer for high-end luxury brands, Givenchy, Ralph Lauren, Alexander McQueen. Presumably at this point, you weren't thinking about the importance of working with waste, or were you?
Not at all. Not at all. I was in a la la land. I was like I was so happy working as a surface designer. And because when I was studying design and I was making the product and prototypes in my college days, everybody told me, oh, who will think about the cost? Who will think about the cost? Working with these brands, nobody questioned the cost. It was just like a free hand. Oh, make a 5,000 rupee swatch of 5 by 5 inch. Nobody will say like, oh, where will we use it? So it was just amazing. And I was... up until I worked like a surface designer for these brands for 5 to 6 years. And in those 5 to 6 years, there was one time when I actually got thinking about this one thing. We were designing a garment which was a 40-meter long trail. And that 40-meter long trail was done across, because all these are hand-done, purely hand-done garments. 40-meter garment was done across the city of Bombay. And when I had to assemble that one garment, somebody has to open an Olympic opening evening kind of a gown it was. And when I had to finish that garment and assemble it together, because it was done in different parts, the humidity level made the color go different, the shade go different at different panels of the garment. And it just took that person who was on the deciding side, who was heading that particular garment or design, I think more than 5 minutes to just say like, discard it, make a new one. It was a 40-meter long trail. And that is the first time actually working for 5-6 years, I questioned that. I always thought, I started my journey with a brand called Wellspun, which makes towels for Macy's and Target kind of stores for US. It's an Indian company, a very big textile company. So I was always told sustainability is a price conscious market. So if designing a $5 towel, you can't really think of sustainability and question sustainability. So I was like, fine. I mean, yeah, everybody wants to waste, and I can't think of just one towel box, and I cannot keep on designing. I need to do something else. But moving forward, when I was designing, this was all in retrospect, by the way. I was not thinking so intelligently all this way, right? But when I'm designing this 140-meter trail and nobody's questioning a 30,000 euro garment, I was like, where is sustainability now? And that is the first time I actually questioned that. Back then it was about $5 and now it's 30,000 euro. Nobody's questioning anything even now. So sustainability is not about price. Sustainability is about intent. And that's when I started to question, is being fair wages enough? What is fair wages when you're not really questioning what took like 100 days to people to make? You discard it in like 5 minutes. All those questions started coming into play back. That was the first time I actually reflected on those thoughts.
So that was the moment you decided your career had to change.
Yeah, the path has to be something else and beyond, much beyond this. It's not just handmade and fair trade and fair wages cannot be the thing.
So then you went to Central St Martin's, graduating,
Yes.
2014, to study on the Materials Futures course. Why there? Why London?
Because most of these designers were from St. Martin's.
Right. The designers you've been working with as a surface designer for the 6 years before, yeah.
Yeah. So if I go to the same college and I talk about completely different end of the tangent, will I still be making sense, or will people be hearing this conversation more seriously, or maybe they still want to buy designer clothes? Was one question I asked myself, and that's why St. Martin's. Honestly, that was it.
I mean, it must have been a bit of a culture shock, wasn't it, London?
I want to answer it very differently. I don't know if you want to put it on record.
Yeah.
But no, we were ruled by 200,
Oh, yeah, you were right. Yeah, no, fair enough.
200 years. I mean, our English is referred to as British English. No, it was not a culture shock, but definitely a very different way of learning experience. I mean, learning is very different, and your exchange about learning, and particularly in a college setup, it was very, very different.
In what way?
It was mostly self-driven. You're not questioned, and you're not like directed as much as Indian education system is very different. People expect, like, while students are expecting, teachers are also expecting that you ask as many questions and you get directed by them. And it was just more of a independent study and an independent this thing. But yeah, it was a very good learning. It was a very good learning at St. Martin's. So
when you arrived, did you have a sense of what you wanted to do?
No, I had no idea what I will be doing at St. Martin's. Yeah, it was kind of a tough time in the beginning. For first 6 months to be able to juggle up having one thought process and water tightening that rationale were completely two different things. So probably when I wrote my SOP, I was thinking about it. But when I landed at St. Martin's, I was not thinking enough about it. So yeah, that was the difference.
And then when you left, did you know that you were going to set up the library?
Yes, I was not going to do anything else from what I have been doing, because I guess I worked at intense hours. Like we all worked for 18 to 20 hours at St. Martin's. It was no less every single day. So for me, it was very clear that I'm not doing anything else. I'm not going to reinvent the wheel for me again. Yeah, so that was very clear. But I did not see myself coming through. Having these conversations back in 2014, I would have still sounded like, maybe, I don't know, 2 years down the line. But no, I mean, I think this thing was very clear that I'm just going to do what I have learned here and what I have practiced here, because that was my own practice, which I developed. Even in London, it was mostly based in the materiality and systems from India. It's
not an easy route you've taken. I wonder what your family made of your choices.
Not very convinced. Yeah. Yeah. Even my son, Grant, I mean, I was hoping only my father would ask that kind of questions, because he kind of paid a lot of tuition fees, a lot of chunk of my tuition fees. But at the same time, now when my son is 8 years old and he asked me, what made you think that you should be doing this? Well, how did this idea come to you? I think that was the time when I was asking, like, oh, really? Even he is asking. So yeah. I have taken, I think, not an easy path. And I live by one definition. Back in the days, I would say, like, if you would have asked me this questions 4 years ago, I would say the fool doesn't know it's watchable. Hence he did it.
So Shubhi, our time is nearly up. Unfortunately, I've thoroughly enjoyed myself. Thank you. typical last question. What's next for the library? What's next for you? What can we expect in the future?
The future of Material Library is more putting out for public knowledge and public consumption projects which are going to actually make people think. So far, in all these years, we have done a thorough work in building the core up and saying, like, why are we talking about this? Why are we doing that? What is our research? And now B2B projects is something is okay to do, but more of public knowledge, more, how do you say it? Outreach. Yeah, so outreach and simplification of this knowledge which we have built over from past 9 years has to be done. And that's what we have done, I think, pretty much entire 2025, 2026 onwards. We have to do it more and more intentionally and more consciously. That outreach has to be done, and people should not be thinking that we are just doing something which are whims and fancies.
So more spreading the material literacy word, essentially.
Yes, absolutely.
Very good. Very good. Well, I look forward to everything that you do in the future. Thank you so much for your time. I really, really enjoyed that.
Thank you so much, Grant. It was a good conversation.
To find out more about Shubhi and the Material Library of India, go to materiallibraryofIndia.com. You can also go to our website to hear other podcasts that I've done, to sign up to our newsletter, and to find out all about the various events we'll be running in 2026. Including Material Matters Copenhagen. One more thing, it would make me incredibly happy if you went to my Patreon page and made a pledge at patreon.com/Material Matters. For as little as £3.50 a month, you can receive invites to various Material Matters events, as well as getting access to each episode before it's published to the wider world. Material Matters is a completely independent concern, and any help you can offer would be hugely appreciated. Ultimately, you'll be helping to take the message, the importance of materials, skill, craft, and design to a whole new audience. Thanks very much for listening.